Still in the preseason prep phase, getting the TCRs ready for our first race weekend of the year at COTA. Today, I'm going to be specifically focusing on nutting and bolting the car, so pretty much the entire chassis, to make sure that everything is good to go on that end. Also, we're going to be replacing the front wheel bearings, rear wheel bearings, also reinstalling the front axles, so it's going to be busy. And we're going to have some bonus footage on this, basically installing these MSI Bullet News studs. So we use MSI M14 by 1.5. You know, it's a double threaded stud, so it's not a press-in, but these are about as safe and as rigid as you're going to get in terms of threaded and wheel studs on the market. New hardware, new wheel bearings, new front wheel bearings, putting the axles in. It's going to be a big one. Let's get into it. Still waiting on transmissions, so while we're waiting on the transmissions to come back, we're trying to take care of these other things while we have some time. Prioritizing what can get done over what can't get done. I think like 15, 16, 17 days until the cars have to leave, so on a time crunch. These new Milwaukee guns pack one hell of a punch. Plus they're tiny and light. That was loose. All right. Just going ahead and cleaning the threads here on these hubs. Do have to Loctite these studs in, so normally there'll be some kind of anti-corrosive agent that come on these wheel bearings from the factory, and just want to make sure that the Loctite has a chance of actually locking the studs in place. Did this one earlier. Like I said, this is a Mark 6 OEM FAG wheel bearing. That's what, you know, these TCRs use in the rear. But just go ahead and apply a nice even coat of red thread locker. Really like these red Loctite sticks. I've actually mentioned in other videos before, but they're a lot cleaner to use, and you know, that's not a bad thing. But try to use a reasonable amount. You know, some of the thread locker is going to kind of push itself out the side, and you know, that's fine. So at this point, to get these studs bottomed out and torqued properly, I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of these old lug nuts, and I'm going to double nut the stud. And basically this is going to be the way in which I drive the stud further into the wheel hub itself. So just go ahead and tighten those, and then what I'll do is I'll take a pry bar and start threading the stud into the hub until it starts to feel kind of tight. Now, one thing to note while doing this is you don't have to use lug nuts. You could use any nut with the same thread size and thread pitch. I would normally use a flange nut with serrations on the bottom, jam those together. I'm just using these old lug nuts right now. If you were to use lug nuts, get rid of them after you do this, because quite frankly, the distortion you're going to get doing this using those jam nuts, they're not really worth reusing. I'm going to go ahead and do the front wheel hub assemblies now. There's a little bit more involved since it's bolted on from behind the hub. It's also worth noting that the TCRs, even though it's a Mark 7, it uses a 4-bolt Mark 6 front wheel hub assembly. So if you ever worked on a Mark 7 before, you've probably seen the 3-bolt assembly. The TCRs obviously has a bespoke front knuckle. And what's interesting to note about this is this front knuckle is actually the same left and right. So it's exactly the same part. The only thing that's different is basically the tie rod connection comes over here, and these mounts for the brake caliper come over here. But on that, it stays entirely the same. So it's one part standardized left and right. And you know, new assembly just kind of slides in. New wheel hub assembly is installed. Next, we're going to take some tamper-proof torque seal, mark the head of the bolts. That way, when we do visual inspections of the track, we'll see if the bolts have shifted or not. Wheel bearings is not normally a problem, but we do this on all the pretty much all the main bolts that aren't touched for adjustment purposes. It's an easy way to identify if bolts have loosened up, and you know, they do occasionally do that. So instead of paint marks, which could technically rotate around 360 degrees, go back to the same spot. If the bolt moves, it breaks the bead, you know right away that bolt has loosened up on you. So that's why we use this.
Okay?
Yeah.
What was that?
Found the limit
What?
of how far the caliper spreader goes.
Just fall apart?
Yeah, I tried to do without a pad in there. It's fine. Base just threads back together. It's no big deal.
1 pad minimum.
Yeah, but we gotta get some
Yes.
something that'll fit in there.
Or just keep a set of old pads.
Yeah.
Like those would be perfect once we take those off.
Yeah.
Although the more meat on the pad, the faster it would go.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, good news.
What?
The other side is way easier than the first.
Fantastic.
Mike, are you still logging the miles?
These calipers can be really stubborn to get on sometimes, so tapping it with a dead blow hammer will get it done for you.
I just set myself a calendar if my 6 months to go up. 3 months or 30 or 3 months. Well, 5.
Beautiful. All right, ready, Roselli? Steering wheel slightly this to the right. Thank you. All right. Steering wheel slightly that way. Brakes hard, baby. More brakes. Thank you, sir. At this point, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this wheel bearing off. Yeah, there should be a cap on these, but the caps generally fly off. They don't really stay on too well. Kind of is what it is. But this is an M18 triple square bolt. It's a factory bolt. Nothing special on that end. These things are torqued very high. 240 newton meters plus 90 degrees. So the thing is basically torqued to within an inch of its life. I'm gonna go ahead and break it free with this breaker bar. It's really best not to use impact tools. You could do other damage, break threads. So, you know, going old school with the breaker bar. What's up?
So, planning on just flashing my car for like 5 minutes, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Alright, yeah, I just want to let someone know. I didn't want to pull up in here, you know?
I don't care at all, dude. Do you? So, you know, these wheel bearings are actually perfectly fine still. There's nothing wrong with them. You know, they have emitted a little bit of grease over time. But these things are cheap. Like I said, these are factory Mark 6 wheel bearings. And, you know, keep them on the shelf here at the office for, you know, next to nothing. So there's no reason to not replace them. Also, there's a little bit of a chunk out of this one. That's weird. So yeah, it's just really one of those things where, you know, replace the studs, replace the wheel bearings, start off the season fresh, and you won't have anything to worry about, or you'll have fewer things to worry about. Take this cap off, and I'll go ahead and give this a cleaning. Also clean the wheel speed sensor too. There's some stuff on there, so I'll kind of give everything a nice cleaning before we install the new wheel bearing. And you know, like I said in a bunch of other videos, there's a lot of factory parts on these cars. So even though it's a factory built race car, Seat just use a lot of off-the-shelf stuff. I mean, if it works, why not? So there we go. Slip this back on. And I'll take the new wheel bearing, slide into place. It just basically fits on like that. We always use brand new hardware when installing parts on these cars. There's no reason to be cheap and not use new hardware. Also, the FAG wheel bearings that we use include the new fasteners, so there's no reason not to go ahead and use them. All right, so we got the new wheel hub installed. One thing to talk about here, and I say this all the time, it's extremely important to make sure that the wheel bearing is actually torqued properly for two reasons. Most important thing, so that it doesn't have the opportunity to come off, because keep in mind this bolt is the only thing keeping this wheel hub installed. Secondly, you want to put the preload on the bearing itself. If you over tighten the bearing, you could have bearing wear. If you under tighten the bearing, well, it could simply fall off or the bearing will fail. So it's always important to make sure that these things are properly torqued, especially on a race car, right?
Correct.
put the studs on that?
I already did. Yep.
You're so fast.
Can I move this over a little bit?
Yeah. So we need to also rotate this bolt 90 degrees. Is a torque to yield fastener. So we already got the 240 initial torque. Now go ahead and take it to 90 degrees. Don't have to necessarily be that spot on, but draw a line at 12 o'clock and you're gonna move it to 3. A little bit more. There it is. Beautiful. Yeah, I'll call that 3. It's definitely accurate enough. Yeah, I ended up getting a decent amount of stuff done tonight. Wheel bearings, wheel stud, torquing all of the main bolts on the car that, you know, are not used for adjusting suspension geometry or anything like that. All that stuff's been done. So really at this point, we're just waiting for the transmissions to come back from Sadev. And once those are back, the engines will be going back in. Hopefully everything runs, but I'm sure it will. I'm not really worried about that. You know, time is ticking, it's coming down to the wire, but you know, wouldn't be interesting if this stuff was done 30 days ahead of time, just be sitting around waiting for race season to start. So I guess in many respects, it's better that staying busy up to the last minute. But it's coming quickly. First weekend of March, we're down at COTA, and then second weekend of March for the St. Pete Grand Prix as a support race for IndyCar, which is a huge weekend, and really look forward to that. So, as always, thank you for watching. Any questions or comments, leave in the comment box below. I'll be happy to answer them. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram. You know, it's floating here on the page anyway. And other than that, hope you liked the video, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Later.